There we go. Unfocused.
Cool.
First.
I actually never did that. You mind if I hit that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Alright. Okay. We're recording. It is going. 55? Okay. Well, we're live.
Alright, welcome back to Biblecast, everybody. Jack, how are things going with you today, sir?
Things are very, very good. Not that, anyone cares, but I'll just say it anyway. We're moving the studio to the basement.
We are. It's going to be a different setting.
Different setting. Maybe the same setting, depending on how the cameras are set up, because I might keep these curtains down there.
I just meant the room.
Yeah, different settings for us.
Yeah.
But that takes away a ton of my money that's going to rent. And so it's, fucking great, to be honest. Last night, I helped my buddy Anthony. He calls me around 12 o'clock. He goes, yo, you know me on something? You think you can help me with something? I go, yeah, what's up? I was editing. I stay up until probably 2 o'clock each night. But yeah, I was like, it's kind of bad. I go, okay, what's up? If I can help, I will. He goes, there's a bat in our house, and me and my girlfriend's house, and we can't get it out. I go, okay. All right, what's going on? He goes, well, it was flying around. I don't know where it came from. I was just playing Xbox. And he's got he's got a blanket wrapped around him.
Like, are you on video call?
Yeah, I'm on FaceTime. He's got a full blanket around him, and then he's like, yeah, the bat's in the bathroom right now. Can you come over and fix it?
Fix it. Can you come fix the bat in my house?
Yeah. And so I went. I'm like, all right, sure. I've never gotten a bat out of the house before, but I guess I can do that.
Take a crack at it.
Took a crack at it like a crack addict. Damn bars. And so I go over there, and he's like, all right. And then he opens the door, and he opens in the blankets. So he looks like, Mother Mary, like, wrapped all from head to toe. He's just wrapped up. And he goes, dude, we were just going to fucking leave it in there for the night if no one came to help us out. And so I'm like, okay, where's that? I go, do you have trash bags? He goes, yeah, we've got trash bags. Okay. So it's in the bathroom. I slowly open the door, and I, like, peek in there, and I'm like, okay, still don't know how reactive these things are. Are they just gonna fucking fly away like in the movies?
Right, yeah.
And the only time I've ever figured, like the only context I had of how to get a bat out of the house is from the Malcolm in the Middle episode, where they're running around trying to get this bat out of the house. Like they took an actual bat, and tried hitting it.
Yeah.
They take a vacuum and vacuum it. That's the only context I had for how to get a bat out. Like, all right, I'll just take a fucking trash bag. He goes, whoa, dude, you're so hardcore. You're just going with the trash bag? Dude, you're that and we can probably censor that. And then, and so he called me it.
Exactly.
And so I go in there, I take the trash bag. I'm like, it's hanging from a shower curtain. It's so funny. It's hanging upside down. It's sleeping. Its heart's beating out of its fucking chest.
Like you can see it.
Yeah. Like I kind of touch some stuff around it to see if it reacts. It doesn't really react when I touch stuff around. I'm like, okay, so just take the trash bag, pull it up, close it, take it, and it was hanging on, some piece of equipment in the shower. Go outside, I let it out, it flies off, come back in, I'm like, all right, I got it. He goes, what, you got it already? It took me like 5 minutes, you got it already? I go, yeah, I just, it's gone, it was no problem. Here's the, you might want to clean this off, this is what it was hanging on. He goes, nah, just throw it out, bro. No, just throw it all out, man. I go, you sure?
Don't fuck with bats. I want that gone.
He goes, nah. And then he goes, bro, like anything you need. Like they're like, oh, thank you so much. Like, let me cook you dinner. Like, you want some weed? Like, what do you want? And I'm like, dude, no, it's cool. We're cool. Like, I'm good. But long story short, I got the bat out of their house.
Nice.
So that's what I've been up to. What about you?
Let's see. I had work, which was. Let's see, pretty good. 2 of my nutrition clients passed the challenge today.
Oh, nice.
Which is very good, very good. They're also continuing on not just with training, but also with nutrition, so I'm going to keep them as clients. That's pretty good. They've been super great the entire time, so I'll be happy to keep working with them,
nice.
What else? Oh, I found out that another one of my clients actually passed her challenge today as well. Well, she didn't pass it today. She passed it yesterday at her halfway check-in.
Oh, nice.
And she's been super, super anxious about whether or not she was actually going to hit her goals, like, to the point of tears at one point. Like, she was just so anxious about it.
Really? Jeez.
Yeah. So, super happy for her. extremely happy for her. So now she's just got 3 weeks to, you know, work out stress-free.
That's awesome.
She already did it.
Now she can eat cake all she wants. And eat pizza and eat it all. Screw it all up, like quarter through and go back.
Yeah, well actually that might be helpful for her because she's trying to put on mass.
Oh,
yeah, yeah, and she has always just kind of struggled to eat enough. You know, she's always been naturally very skinny. Kind of like whenever I first met with her relationship with food sounded very similar to mine whenever right before I started getting into like fitness, generally speaking.
Yeah.
You know, like just really trying to eat as little as possible to stay lean and skinny, but not doing any kind of weightlifting to make that fucking matter at all.
Yeah, right. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So super happy about that. And then earlier in the day was a little bit more stressful. We talked a little bit about that. Just negative interaction with an ex-romantic partner related to a storage unit that we still had after ending things. We don't need to get too deep into what the issue was, but just ended up in a super negative interaction that I didn't feel great after, and so that wasn't very fun. I wasn't happy with the way that went.
Do you think you'd ever be able to, in those situations, do you think you'd ever be able to get to a point where those interactions no longer stress you out? They may, like, let's say, even super infrequently they happen. Because it seems like every time that's going to happen, or it has happened, stresses you out. Could you get to a point where you should go, okay, like, I'll just leave it, like, this is what's going on, I'm not going to interact, I'm not going to engage in this kind of conversation, this is what's going on, and, like, not engage, I guess is the question I'm asking.
Yeah, and ultimately that needs to be the case, and I'm capable of being that way with certain people. You know, if I haven't known somebody for very long and we're just kind of, you know, we're friends, but we're not close friends, we're not, you know, deeply connected to each other. Those types of relationships, the people that I have that kind of relationship with, it's pretty easy for me to just like walk away. I'm not gonna do this right now. You know, like if one of my, I was gonna say more left-leaning friends, but if one of my like radical left friends starts trying to like convince me why capitalism is evil and, you know, just shit that I don't care about. I don't care about the government or the economy that much, as you know, beyond what I can actually do about it, and I don't know what a better option is than capitalism. And I have no power to change the system if I did, so I don't care to talk about it that much. And I don't have that strong of a conviction towards or against capitalism. It's the game we're playing, so I'm just trying to play the game. I don't want to debate it with anybody. So that type of thing, I can walk away. It's like you're looking a bit for an argument, maybe not an argument, but a debate, and I just don't want to engage in that, you know. So I can leave that, but when it turns into, when it's a combination of it being an interaction between myself and somebody that I had a long-standing, very, very close relationship with, and it evolves into like name-calling and accusations and just generally trying to, you know, like be confrontational, however you may be doing that. When it's with somebody that I'm close to or used to be very close to, had some sort of close relationship with, it's a lot more difficult.
Definitely.
And I don't. It's not important if that relationship is gone, you know. So ultimately, I need to get to the point that even with them, I can just like disengage, walk away. I won't lie, at the time while it was happening, certain elements of the conversation felt fun, you know? Yeah. Like, I've been upset with this person for a long time, so it felt nice to know that, like, I hurt your feelings in the same way that, you know, you hurt my feelings many times and intentionally. And that's not how I should operate. That's not how people should operate. That's not healthy. But it's what happened, and like I said, even though during it felt kind of fun to just like, yeah, I upset you, and I'm happy about that because you did the same to me, and fuck you for that. But afterwards, it just kind of feels gross.
I wonder if it'd be really, really cool to like see the effect of this specific podcast, of the Biblecast, in seeing if we can go find stories within the Bible as we go throughout this of like good context for something like this situation.
Yeah, a story that might give you a little bit of insight on how to remedy your likelihood of engaging in that kind of thing.
Definitely. I think, because really when I think about the Bible, I think there is it's an ancient text that is like universal and almost seems all-encompassing. Like every challenge that a human could possibly have, I'm thinking you could find a story of that in the Bible somewhere, and how to handle it spiritually and effectively. It'll be cool to figure out. I hope we can.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. No, and I agree. I do think that the Bible is probably pretty all-encompassing in that fact, as far as very relevant lessons to be learned like that. Like how to disengage from unnecessary conflict, right, as well as engage in necessary conflict. But yet, no, I definitely would assume that there is probably at least one story in there that addresses that kind of thing, and it'll be fun when we get to it, because that's something we didn't mention at the very beginning. We've been doing just kind of not random, we've been picking and choosing stories that we find interesting. Now we're going to be going through chronologically, because as we were going through a lot of those stories farther into the book, we were clearly missing context.
Yeah.
And I've skimmed through, if not all of the Bible, a good amount of it years and years ago, in middle school, because if you were done with your work, you had to read, and you always had your Bible in your black bag. That was our book bag. So, but I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't that interested in it, and that was 13, 14 years ago. Right. So, I didn't retain like anything because I didn't care.
Yeah, exactly. Now we can actually understand how to, in a sense, apply it to our lives.
Exactly, yeah, especially since now we are coming at it from that perspective of these are just stories that are meant to teach you lessons, as opposed to a storybook.
Yep.
Which is what made me disinterested in the first place. Like this is a storybook that you're trying to convince me is fact.
Yep.
I don't agree with that, especially at 13, 14. Like, that is when we are naturally most rebellious.
Right. And that's a good transition into why that we're doing this, and what we said in the past, and like what we'll maybe, add as like a precursor to every episode. Is allegories, and there's wisdom in the Bible that I think is untapped that we can tap into, and that we're going to interpret these stories and how we think that we're supposed to take lessons from them, and utilize the Bible in our way. And not saying that other people have to use it this way, but this is how maybe we're going to use it most efficiently and effectively for ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm sure plenty of other people have utilized it in that way. I don't know. We mentioned Jordan Peterson quite a bit. Well, we've at least mentioned him a couple of times, and I have no shame in admitting that I'm a bit of a fanboy. I'm a stan. Yeah.
I talk about if someone says something bad about Jordan Peterson, like my family, like most things they can't get me riled up about, and then they're like, say something kind of like a sly little comment about Jordan Peterson, I was like, all right, let's go.
Really?
Fuck you guys.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have anyone else that's like that for you?
Well, and people that are like have maybe like seen a couple clips of him and are just like not willing to dive into what he has to offer and the wisdom he has to offer. I'm just like, just fucking watch a full lecture. You know what I mean? Like I've sat stoned and it's a funny story, I guess, but I was stoned and I'm watching him lecture and like I was tearing up because I'm like, how fucking amazing! Like this guy cared. Like he deeply cares about teaching his students and like passing on wisdom to them and how to live a really successful and fulfilling life. And it's just, it is like so powerful and amazing to watch.
Definitely, especially since you can see it in his demeanor and his expressions and the way that he shows his emotions a lot of the time when he's giving these lectures, that he deeply cares about it. And when people either criticize him or, you know, accuse him, like to his face, accuse him of just not being on a good mission, essentially, not seeking to do some good in the world. He gets very upset about that because he cares deeply about what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to that. Obviously, that doesn't automatically make whatever you're trying to do good, but I believe that what he's trying to do is good. He's personally helped me a shit ton.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. His videos played a huge role in me just kind of snapping to and starting to get my life together when I was in my early to mid-20s. And you know, a couple episodes back when we were talking about just the problem that it is if you're wasting time and fucking around, like I was talking about myself, you know, because I came to the conclusion that that's what I was doing. And the combination of watching his videos and also getting into fighting, just combat sports, not just MMA, but initially MMA and then very much Muay Thai. Mm-hmm. Just seeing the dedication that these people put into their craft, and that combined with hearing somebody talk about how important it is to just be productive. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, like that's seems to be the main message to me. It's like, be productive and don't be harmful to the people around you while you do that. Mm. So that, yeah, it was extremely helpful to me, but I think that he utilizes it in a similar way where he's doing a much deeper analysis than we do, obviously. Certainly. I'd say that he is far more intelligent than either you or I, and I have no shame in admitting that either.
Agreed.
But I don't know what his specific beliefs are as far as, you know, whether or not it's supposed to be interpreted as a historical text or just a series of allegories and you know, stories with lessons to be taken away from them. But the analysis portion is certainly, I think, very constructive and a good example of somebody that is doing a lot of good by just kind of exploring the Bible a little bit more. And religion in general. I don't know how deeply he's gotten into other religions, but just, you know, being raised as a Christian, I'm familiar with Christian symbolism and
right.
ideology in general.
Right.
So that's the one that I've been most drawn to.
Yeah. So having said that, well, quick key for when we say words or say certain things.
Yeah,
we've got
phrase keys.
Phrase keys. We've got God, which we interpret as, you know, your highest moral compass, your conscience.
Your conscience, yes, exactly. Whenever that little voice in your head that tells you don't do that if you're about to do something stupid, or says yes, you're doing the right thing if you are doing the right thing, it's your conscience.
Yeah, which is, it's like, because it's like when you're doing something that even slightly bad, you know, it's almost you innately or you instinctually know, like you can tell there's like a push and pull in your mind of like, should I be doing this? And that's God. Whenever we say God, that is God. Mm-hmm. Jesus is the embodiment of God. Jesus is the acting out of our conscience, of our highest moral compass.
Yes, exactly. Jesus, the way I look at Jesus is, whereas the Old Testament set out the guidelines and the rules as to how you should live your life, Jesus was meant to be an example of somebody who has successfully 100% aligned himself with this idea of always doing what God would tell you to do, always doing what the good part of his conscience is telling him to do. Or I guess your conscience is the good part. I don't know what you would call the opposite of your conscience.
Yeah, I don't either. But and then
Satan.
And then Satan was the lowest moral compass.
Exactly.
And then when we reference, like, let's say the kingdom of heaven, that is not a place to go to. It is here on earth. It is in your mind whenever you are actively at peace or in real joy or real love. You are in the state of the kingdom of heaven. And whenever you feel maybe one of the 7 deadly sins, whenever you're feeling greed or envy, whatever it may be, you are actively in hell.
I think that I'll expand on hell a little bit there. I think I definitely agree with both. Neither heaven nor hell are meant to be a place that you go to when you die. You know, you're not going to heaven as a gift for being good, and you're not going to hell as punishment for being bad. Heaven, yeah, definitely 100%. It's that state of peace and satisfaction, deserved satisfaction. Let's make that clarification, because you can be satisfied with, you know, not doing the right thing. I've been there. I don't know if you've been there, but you know, we've also talked a little bit about what I think when we were talking about Abraham and Isaac, just the idea that you might think you've got everything figured out, and so you're kind of in that state of false satisfaction because you think you've got this neat plan laid out for you, but in reality it's kind of an illusion. So deserved satisfaction is important to clarify there. But hell, I think, it goes a little bit beyond whenever you're feeling one of those 7 deadly sins, because I don't think that just being envious of somebody is necessarily akin to hell. I think hell is more meant to symbolize deep misery, like genuine suffering that may be caused by a frequent indulgence in envy, lust.
Well, I guess when I think of envy and lust and in any of these things, when I say you're in a state of hell, you are conversely to not being satisfied. You cannot be satisfied and be envious at the same time. You cannot be satisfied and be greedy at the same time, because you are quite literally searching for something else. You are quite literally not satisfied.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think that would absolutely mean that if you're feeling envious or gluttonous or wrathful, whichever of the 7 deadly sins you may be feeling, I think that does definitely mean that you are not in heaven. I just don't think that automatically puts you in hell. I think there's a middle ground between heaven and hell. I don't think it's one or the other. You know, I don't think I'm in hell right now, but I'm certainly not in heaven. I'm either on earth or in purgatory, whichever you want to use as that kind of middle ground. And maybe if I was going to say maybe if I was experiencing one of the 7 deadly sins, but I have a temper, so I can say I indulge in wrath from time to time.
Okay, well, that's, I don't want to spend too long on that because we're almost at the 20-minute mark.
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about, we're going in order here, chronological order, so we're talking about the creation story to start.
Creation, yes. And do you have notes? I do have notes.
Okay, pull them up for us.
Cool. Okay, so the creation story, I personally, as I was going through it, was not able to find many lines that I felt needed further interpretation. The first 5 days, I think, are pretty boilerplate, so we'll go through that right now. It's still me, Microsoft. Never logged out. Okay. Now, thank you. Okay, so on the first day, God creates light, which again is very straightforward. God creates light. He says that it is good. Then on the second day, God creates the sky, and he says that it is good. And I am going through these very quickly because the Bible really doesn't, there's really not a whole lot to look at and think, what does it mean by that? It is like God created the sky, or God created a barrier between the sea and the sun, and he called it the sky. So then God creates the land, the seas, and I should actually say God creates, no, never mind. So on the third day, God creates land, the seas, and plants to produce food. He says, we'll provide them with seeds to bear fruit. And then God creates the sun, the moon, and the stars. He says that the sun is being created as a greater light to symbolize day, and the moon is a lesser light to mark nighttime. And then he creates the stars. And that it literally just says, he also created the stars. That's verbatim what it says. Then God creates the fish and the birds to populate the sea and the sky. Then on the 6th day, God creates livestock, is what the Bible says, but just land animals, and man. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting, and there might be a little bit more to be drawn away from it. So God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over the creatures that move along the ground. So
he says in our specifically?
In our, yeah. So he could be speaking about himself by saying our. I'm not sure. Nobody else has been mentioned at this point. It's literally just God and his creation. Plural creations. He's created like 7 things at this point. But yeah, so it says our image and likeness, but I thought that was interesting because instantaneously man is godlike, like from right from the get-go, which I think might bolster our idea a little bit that God is actually a part of us and not this deity up in the sky. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So instantly God is, or man.
Instantly God is a bigot and not PC.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, he is instantly speciest over everything that is not human, which, not cool, God, very not cool.
Man and woman, he forgot the others. So
he did forget the others as well. That's what you meant by that. Yeah,
we need to file a complaint with the big man.
Already disappointed. We're on the first. Was that a wasp?
Oh, son, how the fuck did that get in here? Okay.
Window, maybe. Got anything to take care of that?
I think so. Let me see. Where's that?
Intermission by the window, flying over the table, coming towards you.
Son of a bitch.
So he's on one of the lights. And he's all over the place right now, man.
Okay, we can get him out of here. Hold on, let's fucking figure out a way. I've got a towel I can smack him with.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay. You want to go ahead and swing at it?
Hell yeah, dude. I'll take out Wasp. Fuck them. This is a fun
Where's it at?
Last I saw he went down low over there.
There he is, okay.
Where?
He's under the table.
Toss it. You fucking corner me, you bitch. Fuck!
Tell me if you got it.
I hit it. I don't know if he's dead.
Oh, he's pissed off now.
I don't see him. Where is he? Dead as fuck.
You got him?
Got him. Got him good.
Got him. Nice.
Sick. That was, I fucking hate wasps. That was
Yeah,
the first thing I ever got stung by was a wasp.
Okay, well, quick intermission. We had a wasp attack. Anyway, where were we at? We were at
God creating man and giving him control over the fish and the birds. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground. Everything that has the breath of life in it. I give every green plant for food. And it was so.
Good.
So, and then God makes the 7th day a holy day because he rested after creating everything. So that's where the Sabbath comes from.
So I almost wonder, well, do you have any takeaways right off the bat?
Right off the bat, I just think it's interesting that man is godlike.
Yeah.
Immediately from the get-go. That was the most interesting thing that I found in that
I wonder if that's so with the Bible for me. I'm starting. This is what I was thinking about, telling you I had thoughts about. Parts of the Old Testament. I'm not totally clear on how I want to figure this out yet, but I almost wonder if like the Bible takes into account evolution in some way. I wonder. I'm curious when we first started to understand evolution, at like what point in our process. But if it takes into account evolution of like we were monkeys, and at that point we are not godlike. At some point we gain consciousness, and as soon as we gain consciousness, that is when we become godlike. Because even Adam, and we'll get to it in a second here, but Adam and Eve, right? They're godlike, totally perfect, and then they discover. Well, maybe that puts a hole in my theory. Then they discover consciousness in a sense, or self-awareness. Maybe they discover self-awareness, not necessarily consciousness.
They become more godlike by eating the tree, or eating the fruit from the tree. They eat the whole tree.
Yeah, the entire roots and all.
That's the part that most people miss out on, is they actually eat the entire tree.
But yeah, I wonder if it's taking into account evolution from the very first fucking book in the Bible. We were monkeys, and then at a certain point we become conscious. I don't know, because I kind of like that idea. It could be because I haven't really heard just the creation of Adam and Eve and their existence before becoming self-conscious really I haven't heard that analyzed as being symbolic as anything of anything. So no, I kind of like that idea where it's, eating this forbidden fruit is maybe in a way trying to explain the fact that we eventually did evolve into these beings that were capable of higher thought. Yeah, which would be super. It would be super interesting if we dig deeper on that and find more evidence on that the Bible took into account evolution, because there's a lot of, I don't know if they're called Christian fundamentalists or what they are exactly, that don't believe in evolution. They believe that humans were created at Adam and Eve.
Right.
That's super interesting thought. Worth just thinking about. And I just want to make a quick caveat, like, that's kind of what this is. Like, we're not necessarily going to fucking come up with answers on this podcast. Just new ways of thinking, and like, take this thread and see if you can go somewhere with it.
Exactly. We're just talking about it, really, trying to figure out what we can personally take away from it. I don't think that we're ever going to be the guys that are coming to these, grandiose revelations by analyzing these stories deeply with our brilliant minds. It's just a fun back and forth where we're exploring these stories.
It's interesting. Like I've accepted. Part of my insecurity is like not being a genius almost, which is kind of silly, but
I can understand that.
Yeah.
It's perfectly reasonable to be self-conscious about what you perceive as maybe a lack of intelligence, or at least as much as you would like to have.
But I
cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're okay. But I've accepted that in the sense of like, but you know what? I think I can spark thoughts in geniuses that maybe they can fucking take, hand the leash off to them.
Maybe you could give a genius an idea that would actually be a productive thought experiment for them to partake in.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So is that the end of the first book, essentially? That's
Genesis 1 is God making the earth, and like I said, the first 5 days don't really have a whole lot that I could look at and think, there's something to be taken away from that. So that's why we only really talked a little bit about the 6th day when he made man, just because that's where it got a little bit more interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the 7th day he rests, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And the symbolically 7, the number 7 shows up as a motif quite often within the Bible. And one symbolism of it is like completedness. So anytime they reference the number 7 deadly sins, whatever, like the completedness of these things.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So he rests on the 7th day, and that's often why, the Sabbath or the Jews, I think, partake in this as well, and certain sects of Christianity, they don't do anything on this day. They rest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of businesses on the Hill, for instance, the devout Catholics, the Italian Catholics, closed on Sundays.
Chick-fil-A. closed.
Chick-fil-A closed on Sundays. God-fearing chicken business days.
Yeah, that's right. And do you think there's any utility to that? Not even in the business sense of like, yeah, it makes people, like, if it's not, people might be craving Chick-fil-A on Sunday, and because they didn't get it on Sunday, they definitely got it on Monday, whatever, right? Outside of that, is there any utility to practicing something like that?
Just as a human being?
In a spiritual sense.
Well, I think it's important to give yourself a day of rest. Absolutely. You know, some people are just hyper productive and have to just go constantly, but that's not the norm. From my experience, at least, I like to have one day a week where I can just not commit to anything. That's a good refresher for me. So I think, I don't know about if that's a spiritual thing as much as it's just a psychological thing. But from a spiritual standpoint, do you have any ideas on that?
No, I think it's, no, I'll think further on that. What?
Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work in creating that he had done. So it is a blessed day.
You think about a lot of influencers right now, like positive influencers, they talk a lot about it's not about the destination, it's about the journey getting there. And you often find people like that build an incredible business and then they sell it, and you would think after making millions of dollars they'd be satisfied and happy, but a lot of times it shows up they're depressed, like after selling a business or something, right? Because it was that journey getting there, it was those 6 days getting there that was fulfilling them. It was that possibility of something continuing and working towards something, not necessarily getting to something.
Exactly, yeah. I was just going to say actually feeling like you were working towards something, I think, is just naturally very rewarding. It's not even about the possibility for everybody. It's just being productive is fulfilling.
Yep.
You know, I don't like not having anything to do. That's why outside of work I have to pursue creative projects, because I just feel like I'm wasting my time if I'm not doing something.
Yeah.
You know, I can't have more than one day where I'm not working on stuff.
Yep.
I've even, like, I have blocked out and scheduled on my Sunday now to, like, do work. Because it's just, like, Saturday is my day. That's it. That's the day that I have. Because Sunday, I'm not relaxed on Sundays. And this past Sunday, I just did a bunch of shit. You know, I edited, did some studying, and I was able to relax in the evening.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, I just have to get something done.
It's funny, like whenever I'm at the gym with Jake, and like I'm like in a set, and I'm like, oh, this is a miserable set, and I go to Jake and I say, fuck, dude, we're gonna have to do this for the rest of our lives. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna be doing, you know, there is no end to it, and it almost gives me some, maybe peace might not be the right word, but it gives me some satisfaction in like, yeah. Fuck it, you know, we're gonna be doing this. There is no, maybe one day I'll get to a physique and I can just stop and I'll be done and I won't have to work out anymore. I won't have to train. It's like, no, this is forever, and the rest days are gonna obviously come in and are important. But yeah, it's working towards that thing always. Absolutely,
yeah.
All right, well, let's get in. We've got a little bit of time left. Let's get into Adam and
Eve. So this one's a bit more interesting. From start to finish, there's a little bit of stuff that might need to be looked at. So, let me just put this over
yonder.
Over yonder. That's not affecting your shot, is it? Good. Okay, so first off, God creates Adam, and then God creates Eden. Within Eden, there is a tree of life, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil planted in the middle. God makes a river which separates into 4 headwaters, which is like the source of a river or a stream.
Okay.
Pishon flows through Havilah, where there is gold, aromatic resin, and onyx. Sounds lovely. Then we've got Gihon, which flows through Cush, Tigris, which flows through Asher, and Euphrates. No further information on Euphrates.
Okay.
So God puts Adam in the garden to take care of it, and he orders Adam not to eat from the tree of good and evil, or else he will die. Which, right then and there, I don't think is God being deceptive. I think that that is God telling him that who you are right now is going to die. You are going to become a completely different person if you eat the fruit from that tree. And we'll evolve on that when we get to that point. Then God brings the animals to Eden so that Adam has a helper. Adam names all of the animals, but he doesn't find himself a suitable partner. So God...
Do you think that... I wonder if like they're like, you know, don't fuck animals. you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah,
this cow didn't do it for me, God. I need something else, man.
It's like, did you try the dolphin?
No, I've worked really hard on dolphins.
I even tried the blowhole. Tried everything.
What do you think I put that there for?
So, no suitable partners, and so God makes Adam fall asleep, and then he takes one of Adam's ribs and he creates Eve out of Adam's rib, which I struggle to find a connection to. Why does woman come from man? Do you have any initial thoughts on that, or we can mull that over a little bit?
No, it's difficult. I think what I do think is and I've seen this like in the red pill community that I never disagreed with a little bit, but certain people within the red pill community will talk about, well, Eve was the one who tempted. You know, they use it for their specific agenda.
Message.
Yeah, they use it for their specific agenda of like, well, she's the one who tempted Adam into doing it, and I'm like, you're just using that for your agenda. You're interpreting that to fit your agenda.
What are they connecting that to? What are they?
That women now are like the source of why we become evil or whatever it may be. You know, in a very broad way of saying it. That's the message that's coming from that.
Yeah.
And I just never really got behind that.
Yeah. No. And I have my own idea on what that's supposed to mean. So again, we'll get into that whenever we get to the actual fruit eating, but we'll think about that a little bit. Just as far as woman coming from man, maybe that has something to do with just. I'm stopping because I'm kind of disagreeing with my theory as I'm saying it, but I'll say it. So maybe it just has something to do with the fact that men, in a way, do, or at least back then, now, you know, we live safer lives, so this isn't as much the case anymore, but back then, women needed men to keep them safe. You know, just physically speaking, men are more capable of dealing with physical problems. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that without man, woman would perish, essentially, out in the wild. You know, 2,000 years ago, it'd just be out wandering around without somebody that's capable of handling a spear or something.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe that's it. I don't know. That's, again, just right now off the top of my head. I didn't think about that earlier.
Sure.
So anyway, Eve is made from Adam's rib. And he says, Adam says, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." It then goes on to say, "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." So maybe it's just meant to symbolize the idea that when a man and woman are together, they are supposed to become one cohesive unit.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if the creation aspect has a further meaning beyond that, but I think that's absolutely what that is meant to symbolize. 100% that's what I think. Then we've got Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. This is very important. They felt no shame. Serpent tricks Eve into eating from the tree of good and evil. So he tempts her to eat the fruit, and Eve says, well, God said that if we eat this fruit, we'll die. So, no, I don't want any part of that. And the serpent says, you won't die. He doesn't want you to eat it because he knows it'll make you like him. You'll know the difference between good and evil. And so Eve eats the fruit, and then she gives some to Adam, who I guess was not present for this interaction with the snake. But Eve gives him some fruit, and he eats the fruit. Then, let's see. their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked, so they covered themselves. So my immediate takeaway from what it means that Eve is the one that gave the apple to Adam is that women make men self-conscious. Because ultimately this is what has happened to them. They've become self-conscious. They are aware of the fact that they're naked now. So they are self-conscious and they hide themselves, which if you think of just a modern day, if you're feeling self-conscious, you might cover up a little bit.
We actively scrunch our shoulders.
We shell up.
Yep.
Exactly. So I think that the serpent giving Eve the fruit is indicative of the idea that ultimately nature is what makes women self-conscious and aware of their fragility, or at least back then. Again, now it's not so much that way, just because we're not living out in the wild. We are not a tribal people for the most part. I mean, some spread out sects of people are, there are still native peoples in the States that live more natural lifestyles, we'll say, out in the open. But generally speaking, especially back then, it was nature that made woman aware of her just physical, literal fragility. That was her biggest fear, essentially. Whereas with men, it's women that ultimately we are trying to gain the favor of the majority of the time. Obviously, it is important to be respected by your peers, but ultimately the goal is to find a partner. Maybe not for most people, maybe not for all people, but
the rule, not the exceptions.
Exactly, it's the rule, not the exception, or those people are the exception, not the rule. The general rule is people want companionship.
Right.
So, women naturally, I mean, what are some of the? Do you have any early memories of being deeply self-conscious or just like embarrassed?
Definitely, I'll have to think of some that come direct, top of mind. But absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the first few for me are all related to women.
Yeah, I mean, I can think I had puberty later than everyone, which meant that my wee-wee wasn't capable of sexual activities. Like, that was a big one right off the bat,
Sure, yeah, and that just natural concern that I can't have sex yet.
Yeah.
But, it is a big hit to your self-confidence if you are rejected by a woman.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, rightfully so. If a woman rejects you, she is literally saying that, no, there's no chance that I would want to create offspring with you.
Yeah.
You are not a viable partner, sir. So it makes perfect sense that would cause self-consciousness. So I think that is what Eve giving the fruit to Adam symbolizes. Not that women are the ones that draw men to evil.
Yeah.
Not that women are ultimately men's downfall, but just that women are what cause the majority of men's self-consciousness, because ultimately men want to impress women so that they can procreate with them.
Definitely. And I could, to a certain extent, I could get behind the idea of the rule being women are generally more emotional and men are generally more logical, and you see that play out by our career choices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The rule, not necessarily the exception, but
yeah, of course.
That women's minds are more malleable to the initial temptation of something, and that's maybe what I could get from it being Eve is the first one to tell Adam to do so. That's
sure, yeah.
Not that they're actively trying to lead us to temptation, but just that in general those emotions make you more malleable to certain temptations.
Sure. Analyzing the situation doesn't come into play nearly as quickly,
right?
Generally speaking.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. No, I like that as well. Yeah. So, their eyes were open, they realized they were naked, and so they covered up, and then they hear God coming, and they hide because they're naked. And so God asks, "Where are you guys?" And Adam calls out, and he says, "Well, we heard you coming, and we hid because we're naked, and we were scared." And God says, Who told you were naked? Did you eat the fruit? And
just like that.
Just like that. That's exactly what he said.
News for Rat too.
But then Adam immediately throws Eve under the bus and says, well, she gave me the fruit and so I ate it. And then God is like, Eve, what have you done? And so Eve throws the serpent under the bus and says, well, the serpent deceived me. He tricked me. He said that you were lying to me, which not really the greatest argument. Like a snake came down from the tree and said God was lying, so I believed him and did the one thing you told me not to do. But God then curses the serpent to crawl on his belly and eat dust for the rest of his days. And also says that basically he will be at man's heel for the rest of the days of the serpents. Then says to Eve, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Then, so right there, I don't know what self-consciousness has to do with these realities, but back then I would agree that, well, obviously even now painful labor is a thing, but back then I think that when it says your husband will rule over you, it's not meant to be a domineering like lordship where he just has control over you and everything that you do. I think it's just more instilling the idea that you are going to depend on this man.
The man runs the household, and I won't withdraw any, the man runs the household, and that's the most efficient or effective way that we've seen it work so far.
Well, do you want to expand on that?
The man runs, a good household and a cohesive household is going to be run by a man. In the best households and the healthiest households, the man is the leader, right? And
well, the house needs a leader, period. And I think that typically falls to the man because, like you said earlier, generally speaking, men are the more rational and analytically thinking people as opposed to being more drawn or influenced by their emotions. And so generally speaking, a decision maker should be analytical and critically thinking as opposed to emotional. And so I would agree with that fact, generally speaking. I would even say just kind of 100% of the time, unless there just is not a man in the household, a relationship between a dominant woman and a kind of weak and emotional man is most likely not going to work out. Certainly not for the man. He's just going to be walked all over constantly. At least in my experience, it seems that way. You know, whenever I've got kind of one of my more soft-spoken friends and they start dating, a boss bae type, they just kind of turn into, I don't know, quiet husks.
Shells of themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would agree with you on that, and I think that that's just kind of what that passage is alluding to.
And I think truly, if people are being honest, like when that woman is the boss babe, for instance, she is, the rule, and certainly the rule, and certainly not the exception, or in the exceptions, maybe this happens, but the woman, it's going to be hard for her to desire the man when he is not the leader. I just truly believe that.
Well, you're not, this is going to sound harsh, but if you're not capable of making decisions and just being a strong figure, and I don't mean physical strength, but I just mean somebody that is apparently capable, you don't command respect from anybody, much less the woman who is supposed to depend on you as her decision maker and protector.
Absolutely. I think I think we just think that we're more sophisticated than we actually are. Like Dave Matthews has a line, we're a collection of cells overrating ourselves. In a sense, I like that a lot. But we think that we've outpaced evolution, and we just forget to recognize that there are evolutionary processes in ourselves that we cannot control. Like the instinctual desire to back away from a cliff quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are things that are innately in us that we cannot control.
Yeah, or like when a red Ferrari zooms past you and you just instinctively, whoop!
Yeah.
You know, it's your lizard brain.
Yeah, it's lizard brain, and I think like our desires are part of that. Like we have not outpaced a woman has not outpaced her evolution in being able to desire a weak man, because if you go back to evolution, men protected and provided and hunted, and women gathered and took care of the homestead or whatever it may be. We haven't outpaced that evolution yet, in the same way that a man hasn't outpaced his evolution in needing to be, in order to feel fulfilled, pursuing something or pursuing his purpose, let's just say. We haven't outpaced that evolution yet. And so that's why I really think, like we've been saying, a woman is not going to be able to desire a man who is not a leader.
Right. Yeah, definitely. No, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's reset these real quick.
Okay, and we're back. So finishing up the story here. So then God says to Adam, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. From dust you are, and to dust you will return." And then God makes them clothes and gives them das Boot.
Das Boot.
Yeah, so as far as that goes, again, I think that's really just laying out the reality of the world. Like with the women, he's basically just, I think the Bible's just giving an explanation for, why women have painful childbirth, why, and the fact that they are going to depend on men. I don't know how deeply you go into that for analysis.
Sure.
I don't know if anything. I don't know if that has anything to do with self-consciousness. Same thing with the man. It's just the way it is. It's life is hard. You are going to work. You have to work in order to survive. That's not how it was in paradise, but because maybe this does actually tie into self-consciousness a little bit, because if you're self-conscious, you are going to understand the fact that you need to do something productive. At least in my experience, I'm sure you would probably agree to a certain extent.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
No.
Absolutely, and I think something that an interpretation that I've grown to like is, Jesus says, in order to enter or be a part of the kingdom of heaven, you must be childlike. And you think about it. Maybe when we're 2 years old, 3 years old, we are not self-conscious. We are not embarrassed by things. I mean, the Garden of Eden is I think also a symbolic of childhood. And when you start to become conscious and you start to become embarrassed by things, and you are kicked out, whether you like it or not, as soon as you become self-conscious, you're kicked out of that Garden of Eden. Yeah. And it's really just a symbolic sense of the Garden of Eden is childhood. And when you start growing up, you're kicked out of it.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. Yeah, 100%. Especially because as you grow up, that's when you start to realize, just building off of the women making men self-conscious, whenever you grow up, that's when that starts to happen. Mm-hmm. Specifically, it's when you become an adolescent, or even maybe a little bit younger than that, you start to notice girls. I had little crushes in like preschool.
Yeah.
But 100%. As a child, you really aren't self-conscious.
Quite literally, we run around naked.
You run around naked. You say out-of-pocket shit to adults. Like, I saw a meme today that was just like, little kids are so crazy. They just walk up to you and be like, "You're so ugly," and then cartwheel away. They don't understand like social boundaries or conversational norms and etiquette.
Sometimes I'm standing in a line and we're out in public, and a kid like just narrowly runs into me or almost misses me. I'm like, these kids have no perception of personal space.
Personal
They have
space.
literally no,
Just no self-awareness.
yeah, no self-awareness.
Yeah, they just exist in the world as these individual beings within their own mind. All of us exist as individual beings,
Yeah.
but within their own mind, they are just them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're not considering everybody else around them.
And a funny story to pull into this specific scenario, when you asked, do you ever recall a time when you became self-conscious, or
Just felt deep self-consciousness or
yeah.
embarrassment.
Well, for the longest time, like, I would just be with like the door open at my house, and then eventually my dad's like, "Yo, we have guests over, like, close the damn door." And it had never occurred to me to like close the door when I was peeing. I'm like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I guess
I don't care who sees my dick.
yeah, right. And then that slowly starts, okay, I guess I'll start closing the door now. And
Yeah.
that closing the door, I was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, in a sense.
And I think, yeah, just based on what you said about getting into heaven is somewhat reliant on you being a bit childlike. I think it is very healthy to lose certain elements of your self-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to maintain the part of your self-consciousness that leads you to just work and have drive to improve and things like that. But as far as being worried about others' perception of you, I think that it is extremely healthy to drop that. Obviously, there's a line there. You can't just abandon all recognition of social norms and start like walking around your neighborhood completely naked and flipping all your neighbors off. But, recently I've been working on music more. I told myself today, like, I'm recording lyrics. I don't care. I've written them. I'm working on the instrumental for it. And for a long time, I've had trouble pulling the trigger on that because it's just like, I don't know if I'm a good enough singer for people to not listen to it and just think this is ass. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy, to just not give a shit about that kind of self-consciousness anymore.
Absolutely.
Putting out content like this, I personally dealt with a little bit of self-consciousness before I started, I probably had to get over it more when I started streaming, just because that was my first kind of endeavor into just putting myself out there regularly. But I had to get over a little bit of a second hurdle with putting out long-form content as well, just because it's a different thing. It's not I'm online when I'm online and then it's over. No, this is going to be online forever. Once it's on there, it's never coming down.
Can I tell you something I've observed in you, if you don't mind?
No, absolutely not.
But I have definitely observed, like, that it seems like you have to rile yourself up in a sense, or seems like you have to put a lot of preparation into coming into here, not necessarily in like the note-taking part, but like prepping yourself up to put yourself on camera. I've noticed. Just
how do you mean?
Like when your energy the energy, like, it seems like almost as if you were amping yourself up prior to this, even just not necessarily shaking yourself out or something, but mentally preparing yourself for something like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, just because and that's less of a self-consciousness about me just not, initially the issue was me just thinking like, well, what if I look stupid? What if I, I'm just bad at this, et cetera, just minor little, nothing too specific, just those little thoughts that pop up into your head whenever you're starting something new, that little voice of doubt that's just like, what if this, what if that, nothing that you're thinking of for any particular reason. Now it's more, I guess, just making sure that I am going to be attentive, high energy, and just bring what I need to bring to the table, metaphorically speaking. We are at a table. But, so I would definitely agree with that. I do have to kind of just amp myself up a little bit, tell myself, you're ready, you're good, loosen up a little bit, be ready for that. The cold open helps with that a lot, just kind of getting conversation going. And also having actual, preparation here also helps with that. But no, I would certainly agree that, yeah, I do have to just kind of build my energy up a little bit. And I'm sure one thing that you may have noticed is I feel like I'm a little bit lower energy when I show up as opposed to when we start. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but as we get going a little bit and I get more comfortable with it, I think that's when the amping up kind of ends. When we're like 5 minutes in, that's when I feel like I'm going.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Good to know. Cool. Well, any final thoughts on Adam and Eve?
No, I don't think so. No, I think that we've gotten a good start on going through chronologically. You know, like you said at the very beginning, we aren't doing a deep analysis here. We're not like great thinkers or anything like that. So, no, I'm happy with what we got so far.
Cool. So next up is Cain and Abel, and Jordan Peterson has certainly delved super deeply into that, and I'll probably watch his stuff before we do it.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I forgot that he did a video about that, or probably multiple. But yeah, I've listened to at least one of his lectures about that, and that's an interesting one. You know, that almost makes me think a little bit about Judas and Jesus to a certain extent, where it's not a direct parallel, but just the sacrificing of, or you know, the killing. Judas didn't directly kill Jesus, but he caused it essentially, whereas you know Cain killed Abel. But it's a story of betrayal of ultimate good. You know, God was extremely happy with Abel because he, you know, was doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was giving meaningful sacrifices, etc., etc., and Cain just wasn't, and he knew he wasn't. But instead of doing better, he killed the one that was.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's next up. So thanks for watching on this one, guys and gals, and everything in between. And we will be back next week.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. All right.